Thank you very much, Alex, for the kind introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me to the committee. I am here on behalf of our research team, which consists of Natalia Wächter, Elena Stuhlpfarrer, Johannes Fussi, and me, myself. And I'll be very happy to present you the preliminary results of our research project, Insert Coin to Continue. I'm also very happy that the main topic of this event is games and money, since it is a topic that for a long time has been underneath the radar of researchers, policymakers, and educators alike. But no longer so as it seems, so I'm thinking that this is a very desirable development. Yes, without further ado, let's start the talk. This talk will be divided into three parts. At first, I will talk to you about the exact mechanics we were researching upon and explain them a little bit. Don't think it is necessary, but I will do so nonetheless for those who might not have been in contact with them. Then I will talk about the methods that we used in our research project to end up with our preliminary results. I will end the talk with some policy regulation recommendations that I will gladly be happy to discuss with you. It will just be a few ones. I will start with this analogy from my dear colleague Jochen Kubeck. Let us say you want to buy an apple from a farmer. The transaction normally goes this way. You go to the farmer, you buy him a certain amount of money, and the farmer will hand you said apple that you can then enjoy. Now let's imagine that you do not buy the apple itself, but you can buy a blossom on the tree, on an apple tree, in hopes that maybe it would turn out to be a good apple, or if you're unlucky, it will turn out to be a bad apple, as they say. Let's go further and say if you buy a certain amount of apples at this farmer's place, you get some pears at another farmer's place for free. Or let's even go further and say you can buy a box at this farmer and there's an apple in hopes that there might be an apple inside it, and maybe there is, and maybe you're unlucky and there's some rotten bananas in it. This, of course, is absolutely nonsensical when it comes to the practice of selling apples, and I doubt that this farmer would have a very good outcome or a very good income with this kind of business model. It is, however, as we all know, the business model that has come to play when it comes to video games, and this is why I find this analogy quite revealing. Video games themselves have moved from being a service, shown here on the left-hand side through this arcade machine, where you insert some money and you have a certain amount of time to play. They have moved on to become a necessity, shown here as the Super Nintendo console. This is something you can buy, you can own, you can sell again, you can hide it from the children, you can do with it whatever you want. And now it has been moved back to the model of being a service. This is shown also from the numbers. I'll show you this quite overloaded chart here from Newzoo, which is a statistical site that estimates the income of the global games market here in the year 2022. I just want you to focus on two numbers. In the middle of the chart, you see the total income of the global games market, the total revenue, which is about $203 billion. And on the right hand, you see that more than half of it, 51% of it, was made by mobile games. And mobile games are traditionally free to play. That means more than half of the income of the industry derived from games that are free, essentially. Still, people pay lots of money for these games. And the question is, why would they do so? One answer is by the implementation, or because of the implementation of dark patterns in this game. Dark patterns have been mentioned before, so I will only mention one of them right now, the artificial scarcity. Dark patterns, dark patterns in the sense of Dark patterns in the sense of gaming would mean that the developer of the game has not the joy or the joyful playing experience in mind when he designs the game, but rather something else. In the case of free-to-play models, this is they design games in order to make people spend money on them. Artificial scarcity being one of the most common dark patterns, of course, means that the game shows you that some virtual good is only sold in a certain amount, or there's only a certain amount of a virtual good available, which is, of course, not true. As a virtual good is theoretically infinitely available. Also seen here is the small windows of time playing by appointment. It's called some small windows of time in which these goods were sold or are sold. And this is a very potent dark pattern. I know for myself youth who schedule the whole day around these dark patterns in video games, who have their alarm set at 2 o'clock in the morning in order to do something in the game or buy something in the game. And it's very potent among our youth. I can only talk for youth right now. Then, of course, one of the dark patterns that is really well known are the loot boxes. Loot boxes, of course, pose pseudo randomly generated contents that you can buy and hope for, and hopefully you will get what you want, and most likely you will get something else that you don't really have a use for. And I emphasize on the word pseudo randomly generated, because there's no randomness when it comes to opening loot boxes. It's always an algorithm who decides what you get. Colleague Ralf Möller earlier addressed the topics of patents from designers that steer these algorithms towards the idea that people spend more money. Then, building up upon these loot boxes, there's a whole lot of practices that many people engage in and that are not exactly dark patterns, but they're really, really closely connected to those, and in this case, especially to loot boxes. And we researched those as well because we thought it is an extended, it is a practice that does not work without loot boxes themselves. This, of course, is skin gambling. For those who are not aware of skin gambling, this is the game Counter-Strike, where I bought a loot crate for €2.35, the key to a loot crate. And I got this plastic skin, the skin plastic magazine, it's called, skin for a weapon in Counter-Strike out of it. Now I have two possibilities. I can either sell it back to Steam directly and get money back on the course that Steam sets for themselves. I did this and I got 20 cents back, so I made a total loss of about €2.15, but it was for science, so it was totally okay. And I have another possibility as well. I can sell it via a third-party market. There's sites like Bitskins or CSGO Stash, where I can sell these skins to another player. And depending on the rarity of these skins can cost a lot of money. We're talking about skins that are estimated about 15,000, 20,000 euros. And these skins sell, which is startling for me. And this is skin trading. When it comes to skin gambling, there's other third-party sites like CSGO Roll. CSGO Roll is a site that allows you to put your skins into the site, to allow the skin to the access to your skins, allow the site access to your skins, and you get some kind of currency on the site, and you gamble with it. You play pachinko, you play roulette, and the money you maybe will win will get paid back to you in form of skins. So skins here pose kind of a cryptocurrency, a currency which has its own course, which has its own charts where its worth is valued. And the sites like CSGO Roll, which is a very, very well-known site and also a big sponsor of esports, use these skins as a currency for their gambling practices. Then, of course, there's influencers who facilitate these, let's say they facilitate, we don't really know, facilitate these gambling practices by making back openings in their streams. This is Phoebe, a German influencer who's right here seen doing back openings in her stream, and the hope of getting some very rare skins and selling them back to Steam or back on a third-party website, most probably. This is, or to further emphasize the interconnection between influences and gambling, this is an example that I found quite revealing. The platform Kick, for those who do not know it, is a platform that's very intertwined with stake. They're doing sports gambling, sports betting, and they have the whole money from the gambling industry, essentially. And they, the last few months, they started taking under contract the biggest influencers on sites like Twitch. This is XQC, one of the biggest influencers on Twitch, who subscribed to, or who did a contract with Kick, which was worth a few $1 million. And apart from playing video games, as seen here, he started playing casino mobile games, exposing his whole followers to this practice. This is a game called Racer Returns. You can change it with any given casino game here, Book of Ra, whatever. This is also something that we looked upon in our research. Then there's some practices that I was not familiar with, but that came up during our interviews. I don't know if any of you knew the practices of wagering, because I didn't. Wagering is done via third-party websites as well, where people can bet on their own win in games. Like we have a youth who played Fortnite and who bet €2 on their own win in a custom game of Fortnite, and 100 people play this game. Everyone pays €2, and if you win, you get 180 euros back, and 20 euros always go to the site, which essentially might be more skill-based than, for example, opening loot boxes, but still it's a form of wagering or betting on your own win in this case. So one might ask the question, how is this in any way relevant? Where is this problematic? This is just something young people do, and maybe the industry tries to manipulate them in some way, but this is something that happens everywhere. How is this concerning? For me, it's concerning because there's expense concentrations, meaning that the mobile game sector, that the revenue in the mobile game sector is mostly made by a very small amount of players. Here, this is a project of Ingo Fiedler, a German colleague, who said that 5.5% of the players generate 67% of the revenue in mobile games. This is akin to gambling, where also there's a distribution or a concentration of high spendings among very, very little or few players that most likely many of them would have pathological way of use or pathological gambling as well. So it is interesting for us who these 5% of the players are. Are these people who are financially well off, who can afford to put this kind of money into gaming? Or are these people who are socially vulnerable and who get maybe also purposefully attacked or engaged by these kind of predatory business models that video games pose? And we're trying to answer these questions by doing our research. This is an excerpt of the research questions of Insert Coin to Continue. By the way, this has nothing to do with the before mentioned Insert Coin, the Norwegian consumer protection study. We were thinking 2 years ago it was very smart and innovative to get this kind of title, but the colleagues from Norway were faster than us. One of the questions is, why do adolescents spend money on free-to-play games? Meaning, we were assessing the motives on why this is so interesting for them to pay in a game that is essentially possible to play for free. Then we have the question of how much money it is that adolescents in Austria spend on in-game purchases, and regarding to the 5% again, who spends the most money. Also interesting for us is which are the mechanics that most money is spent on, because that might hint towards possible problematic mechanics, and some of them might be more predatory than others. How did we approach this? We have a mixed methods approach. We conducted 20 interviews, 20 qualitative interviews, and 3 group discussions with 29 students between the age of 13 to 24. As you can see, we have a rather far-fetched idea of what adolescents are in Austria. This has an empirical background. Then, building up on these qualitative findings, we did a quantitative survey among 2,606 students between 10 and 19 years. These were randomly selected, and the sample is stratified by federal, state, school type, and grade level. This was quite a bit of work, foremost bureaucratical work, to be honest, but I'm happy to say that I think we had achieved a very high level of data quality in this survey. The questionnaire was fairly short, of course, because many of our participants were really young. Coming to our results, the first question in our survey was, have you ever played a game where in-game purchases were possible or are possible? And you can see here that an overwhelmingly large percentage of our participants stated that they did. Very similar also among the genders. The female players reported a little bit less playing these games, but about 85% of the players in total, of our participants in total, played a video game where it is possible. Next question, logically, would be, did they ever pay money? And we asked, did they ever pay money? But we also asked, did they pay money in the last 12 months? Because this was the part of the sample that we did our calculations with. So as you can see here, 42% of the total sample reported that they did spend money in the last 12 months, while there's a bigger difference between the genders this time. Seeing that people who describe themselves as male far more often made in-game purchases than those who reported themselves as being female, which were only 21%. The age doesn't really play a role as it seems. Then, next question is, how much money did they spend on in-game purchases? And this is an interesting chart because it shows really well that the data here is not normally distributed when it comes to spending in games. As you can see, about 80% of our total sample, which shrink down to 818 right now, because these are the ones who played in the last 12 months, 80% of those paid below 200 euros a year, which would come up to, I don't know, 15, 16 euro a month, which in my opinion would be in the range of pocket money and would most likely not be very problematic in any way. Then there are people who spend largely higher sums. Coming to those who spend more than 1,000 euros, it's about only 3% of our total sample. Or of the 818, not of the total sample. Exactly. Also visible here, there's a difference in the mean spendings between female and male participants. Male participants stated a much higher number, 180 euro versus 101 euro that was stated by the female participants. This is a number that's also statistically significant. We did we did the t-test on it, and it showed that it is statistically significant as well. The games which our participants spent the most money in were also questioned or also assessed. The top grossing games here were Fortnite, Roblox, and FIFA. When it comes to the total, when we leave gender out of the game here, Fortnite is not really surprising, since Fortnite is one of the most popular games since 2007 and going on. What's a little more surprising is are games like Genshin Impact here, only visible at the female participants. And Roblox, which is of course not really a game, but is more is more a platform for game developers and for young people who aspire to be game developers, and who is a whole topic of its own because it's really, really difficult to regulate something like Roblox. Another question was in regard to the influences that were mentioned before. We asked how many of our participants were watching influencers who regularly were hosting back openings. And we found out that 57% of the 818 participants who paid for video games in the last 12 months also watched influencers or followed influencers who made back openings. The ones that are most popular here are Madonna Black, Trimax, and Paluten. Please note, these are not the most popular influencers among youth. These are only the ones we only gave those who open back openings as a possibility. Okay. Then we assessed the high rollers. The term that's often used by the industry is the term whales, which is kind of derogative and dehumanizing, which is why we decided to go to the term of high rollers, which is also deriving from the gambling industry, of course. Who are the high rollers? Who are in our case, it was 10% who spent the most money on video games. We found out that those were predominantly male people, and that their primary purchase motivations were to improve in the game and because opening loot boxes is exciting, which means arousal is a big part when it comes to the motivation of those who spend most money, and also a competition, which of course also relates to the classic male socialization. Yes. There was anecdotal evidence that migration or the experience of migration plays a role when it comes to spending in games. We did not find any correlation when it comes to this in our survey. What maybe is more interesting is that parental knowledge in the group of the high rollers is significantly lower than in the total sample. It's 66% versus 80%, and the question behind these numbers were, do your parents know how much you spent in video games? Meaning 80% of the total sample said yes, they do know. In the high rollers, it was only 66%, while you could argue that this might also be explained by the age, because if you're 19 years old, you have more money available, and you maybe don't ask your parents anymore if you can spend the money in video games. It is, however, the average age in these high rollers is, however, quite young. It's 15.3 years old. So it might not be able to explain by age. There were some of the influencers with back openings that were significantly more predominant or prevalent or prominent in the group of the high rollers, and which is for me interesting, the game Fortnite was not as prominent as it was in the whole group. The games that were most prominent were Valorant, CSGO, and Genshin Impact. Valorant is, of course, a game that is very well known for its high cost of skins. And the skins in Valorant that cost about 70, 80 euro, and people buy them in order to show off their social status and economic status, I guess. CSGO is the game that's mostly intertwined and connected with skin gambling that we just showed earlier. And Genshin Impact is really well done, a game that's from first view looks similar to a Zelda game, and that's backed with gacha mechanics like loot boxes and similar. And it's interesting that these are more prominent among the high rollers. Then we also assessed gaming disorder in our sample using the gaming disorder test from Pontis from 2021, which is a validated instrument, though of course not clinically validated instrument. And we found out that there's a significantly higher prevalence of gaming disorder among our high rollers than it is among the total sample. It's about 9.4% among the high rollers versus 1.8% among those who paid money in the last 12 months. Hinting towards gaming disorder playing a role towards the idea that gaming disorder is playing a role when it comes to spending high amounts of money. We have 8 hypotheses. I will show you only 2. One of those were that children from economically disadvantaged backgrounds spend as much money on in-game transactions as children from higher income families. This is another question or another hypothesis that goes back to the idea of the 5%, meaning are these people who can afford to buy this money, or are these people who who spend this money, or are these people who are socially or economically disadvantaged and are getting targeted by these predatory mechanics? And we found out that we could verify this hypothesis, meaning that it didn't matter how much how high the socioeconomic status of the family was, they would still spend as much money. Secondly, we asked if there was a difference in the amount of money spent on in-game purchases between adolescents who regularly watch influencers hosting back openings and those who didn't. And we measured this doing some correlations, and we found out that this is also true, meaning that that the adolescents who spend more money are also watching influencers hosting back openings more often. Of course, we cannot say a direction by doing correlations alone. We cannot say if the watching of back openings from influencers causes directly the spending of money in video games, but there is a correlation, though it's very weak. It's highly significant, but it's very weak. So there might be other reasons for this kind of behavior. I will present you some further results coming to the end of this talk, some further results, and I want to emphasize 2 points. What we found out is that it's largely normalized to spend even high amounts of money in video games. While for me as a mature gamer, it might be kind of strange or not normal, at least, to spend high amounts of money in free-to-play games. I'm used to buy a product and own it for myself. Many of you maybe also are. Adolescents in our survey did not know this possibility. They grew up with the idea of video games being services, and it's been largely normalized to this point where when a new FIFA or FC 24, as it's called now, comes out, the question is not, will I pay money in this game? The question is, how much money will I pay in this game? Further, spending in video games are a social practice. It's nothing that these people do alone. It's something that always happens in a social community. There are many of our interviewees who reported that they sit together in the evening on the couch or are connected via Discord, and one of them starts buying loot boxes or card packs in FIFA, and then everyone follows them via Discord. And if you buy a pack of 20 euro, or spend 20 euro buying packs, might be about 10 packs, 8 packs, the other ones have to, because you're putting social pressure on them. And then everyone buys packs for 20 euros, and it's always followed. And people are laughing about it when there's nothing in them. People are happy for each other when there's something in. It's a social practice. The first point I want to make here are that in-game transactions are often viewed as a game by itself. What do I mean by this? I can show it by showing you a small excerpt from an interview. This is Anton, 23 years old, who reported his experiences playing CSGO. We had a round where we were just frustrated and said, okay, let's open some boxes. We need a good feeling again. Those were 5 hours where we just failed. And then, as a positive feeling, we pulled another box and we got a good weapon skin again. Meaning, this practice, it's really interesting because in other interviewees stated when we have a round of winning, when we win 10 games in a row, we reward ourselves by buying some loot boxes. It doesn't really matter what the outcome is, it's only a rationalization to why do you buy the loot boxes. But still, these are 2 different games. He's playing CSGO, which is a totally fine game by itself, and then after they are done playing CSGO, they comfort themselves or they reward themselves by playing another game. This is opening loot boxes in CSGO. So it seems that like these two games are forced together, are forcefully intertwined together in order to maximize revenue. This is really interesting when it comes to regulation. Further results are that there's simulators. To emphasize this point also, the simulator games, you can check it out on your Play Store. The simulator games for games like Brawl Stars, where you can just simulate opening loot boxes in Brawl Stars. This has nothing to do with the game Brawl Stars. It has millions of downloads, and you can do it, and you can open boxes in Brawl Stars, but you can never use the things you find in Brawl Stars, actually. It just simulates the experience, and this is something that people do, meaning it's another game. Okay. Some further results too. There are lots of analogies that we found in our interviews to classical gambling. Reporting wins, concealing losses is one of the main characteristics of ongoing gambler. It's the same as with people who at least open loot boxes here. They are opening loot boxes, and whenever you win something, you post it in a WhatsApp group. You show it in your Discord channel. You never post the things the boxes where there's nothing in. Thereby creating a picture that winning is much more possible than it actually is. There's a very high event frequency, and event frequency is the single most important factor when it comes to the development of addiction in classical gambling. I'd like to suggest that there are no people who are only addicted to lotto, to the classic Austrian lottery, because there's only 2 events a week where you can play lotto. I can't go home now and start playing lotto the whole night. I can buy a few lotto tickets, but I can only play tomorrow, I guess, and 2 times a week. Meaning the event frequency is quite low. And there will be very little people who are only addicted to lotto. I would suggest none people, no one. Like a gambling mechanic that is much more addictive are the cash machines, so the slot machines. Thank you very much. The slot machines, of course, who have a very high event frequency. And also, if you look on, if you watch the YouTubers and the streamers who post back openings, who do back openings, they buy not only 1 loot box, not 2 loot boxes, they buy 50 or 100. The event frequency is very high. And also, so do our participants. No one buys 1 loot box. Why would you? Buy a few. Thirdly, chasing is maybe the characteristic, or maybe one of the cognitive dissonances that is most prevalent in classical gambling, meaning you lost €1,000 today, and tomorrow you have to make this €1,000 back in the casino. And if you lose them again, you have to make €2,000 back. And this adds up really fast if you keep losing. So you're always chasing behind your losses. And this is something that's really, really similar to the reportings in our study. This is one of the interviewees, there were many, who stated similar statements. It already annoys me that I didn't get anything worthwhile for the money. Let's try again. Maybe it will improve. Maybe I will get something from a second back to make the money back. You just want to somehow recover your loss, and eventually you have such a high loss that you can't really make the money back anymore. This is a student named Jan. Of course, he wasn't named Jan, but he was 17. So this is a chasing behavior, classical chasing behavior, also been able to be seen among adolescents doing loot box openings. Which leads me to my second point. My second point is it does not really matter if in-game transactions are gateway into gambling, because most of the body of research that has been done on loot boxes or pay-to-win mechanics the last few years regard the question whether those are a gateway to problematic behavior. Are loot boxes, do people who open loot boxes, are they more likely to do real gambling? Because everyone knows gambling could be harmful for people, yes? So a very big body of research concentrates on this question, and I want to argue that this question isn't that important, because they are problematic in themselves. There are many people who spend lots of money on loot boxes without ever doing any gambling or having any gambling experience. And it doesn't really matter if they qualify as gambling in the last. It doesn't matter. It's a regulatory problem, but they are problematic in themselves. Whether they are gambling, whether they are a gateway to gambling, other problematic behavior, it doesn't matter. I will end here with some policy recommendations, and I will do some very, very few ones because there are many out there, such as transparency when it comes to buying, or the option of self-exclusion or third-party exclusion from the buyings, from being able to buy money. I just want to add some new, and this is also an excerpt only, to that draw upon our research. And in our opinion, it is very important to increase the inhibition threshold, meaning the Hemmschwelle in German, making it more difficult for people to engage in this kind of practice. For example, it would be very easy to set the opening hours of a game shop to a nightly hour. Because many of the companies argue that they are trying to do some youth protection work. It would be very easy. Set the opening hours to 22 till 4 in the morning, and you're starting to make it very difficult, or more difficult for young people to engage in this practice. Then start to tackle the event frequency, which is, as I said, the single most or the most dominant factor when it comes to the development of addictive behavior. Allow the purchase of only one item at a time. You buy a loot box, you can go back, you can open the loot box, and then there's a cooldown phase. You have to wait 2 minutes to buy another loot box. Because as we know, people are not rational. No one is rational. And the idea of a rational consumer is false in the first place, but there's also the idea that the gambling industry always draws upon when they are talking about consumers. They have the idea, or they support the idea that people are rational and can decide for themselves what they are doing. This is not true. Capitalism wouldn't work if we were really rational consumers and we're thinking about everything that we buy or will not buy. So it is very important to implement a cooldown phase in order to prohibit or to lower the event frequency of these kind of purchases. This, I think, will be the end of my talk. This is a small throwback to the times where video games were a much easier topic and less complicated topic, I guess, but still fun. Thank you very much.